Hello, everyone. Welcome to Hardly Heroic. It's Emilio here, and I'm coming with you today with a very unusual video for this channel. So today's video is going to be basically a tutorial on how to add Studio, the Lego building program, to a Linux distribution. Those of you who know me know that I'm really interested in Lego. I'm a very active mock builder, and I have been using Studio for many years to basically build my mocks, and then I can render them and showcase them and all kinds of other stuff. Occasionally I will even build the thing that I'm trying to model. Unfortunately, I've lost that capacity recently because I switched from Windows to Linux. Owing to my distaste for Microsoft's software monopoly and their business practices, I've now completely gotten rid of Windows and have been using Linux ever since. For the most part, this is fine because I can use Steam to play a lot of the games that I previously was able to. It just took a bit more fiddling. However, one problem has been that the Studio application has not actually worked because Lego, or rather Bricklink, don't provide an official Linux version of the program. Now, this tutorial was created with the very gracious help of a person on Reddit. The full credits will be provided to them in the description, but I just wanted to again shout out this person. They really helped me, and I hope that by making this tutorial, you can then follow this process if you're thinking about installing Studio on your Linux distribution, so that you can still also have access to Studio. Now, before I get into Studio, I do have to mention that there is actually a native Linux application that will work for doing mock modeling and stuff. It's LCAD, LDraw, I think, LeoCAD. Yeah, that's the one. Basically, there is a drawing program that you can use to build stuff with. It does provide a native Linux distribution. I will provide a link to that as well in the description. If you are just starting out and you have Linux and you've never used Studio before, I think it might be worth it to just learn how to use that program. Unfortunately for me, I've been using Studio for many, many years, and just completely starting over in a new program is not necessarily what I want to do, especially because I have a lot of Studio files that I would still like to keep, and you know how it is, right? You've been using a piece of software for such a long time, it just becomes very useful and very familiar to you. So I wanted to use Studio. I now have a way to use Studio. It's not perfect. There are a couple of things that I'll talk about that are not exactly perfect. So I'm really hoping that one day maybe we will get an official Linux distribution for Studio, but I don't know if we can necessarily hold our breath. This tutorial is done on a Linux Mint distribution. So if you have a different distribution of Linux, it's possible that some of the steps will have to be changed. But basically what I wanted to provide is a full tutorial that shows you all the steps and sort of all the things. If you have issues, you can put them in the comments. I will try to help you as best as I can. You know, hopefully this might serve as a useful resource for people who are trying to configure things on their own. So, in order to first start this process, we have to actually open our Steam, which is launched here, and we need to add a non-Steam game to our library. So what we're trying to do is essentially install the Studio application in a Windows environment on our Linux system. So you can see here I have I've got the Studio exe file. I got this from the actual download page. Obviously, I went with a Windows version of this, just so that it will work on my on my setup. And the idea is we want to add this to our environment, and we want to get Steam to launch it. All right, so I add the selected program. You see it shows up here. If I click play, nothing happens, and that's because I have to force the compatibility. So I need to go here and click this box that will say force the use of a specific Steam Play compatibility tool, and then I will select Proton Experimental. Proton Experimental, here we go. So now when I click this button, basically Steam is going to treat this as a Windows application with their compatibility layer, and it should run. Now, I have already installed Studio, so I am not going to go through that process with you again because it can kind of take a while. But here you go, you can see that the application has launched. You just accept the terms, install it. That should be quite standard. It's a standard Windows installer. Okay, so once that's actually launched, the next thing you need to do is basically it will create an exe file, which you can see here. And that Studio exe file, if you launch it with Steam, again following the same process, making sure that you've got your compatibility layer forced, that will then launch your program. And then, fingers crossed, if you did everything right, your Studio program will launch. Now, the performance of this is maybe not the best in terms of a native distribution. There are options that you've got for basically launching Studio with other compatibility tools in Linux. This is the one that I found that has given the best performance, and it's also to some extent the easiest to set up, because essentially you just run it from Steam. Most of us already have Steam, and that is how a lot of things go. So you can see here I am. I've got Studio open. I can open a file. I can do everything that I need to do. This is where we find the first big difference. You can't actually sign into Bricklink from this, because you have to remember this I/O application is running inside a Windows container. It's not actually running on your actual real machine. So I don't think, at least I'm not aware of a way to get it to work. Yeah, I tried to log into Bricklink and I just wasn't able to. I assume that that's because it's running actually inside of a container and not actually on the desktop. So, I think there are things to work with, but you have all the functions. You can do everything that you need to do. You can render stuff as well. It will render everything. You can create instructions. You can do all the things that you would normally do with Studio, except you don't have access to Bricklink. That's not the end of the world, however, because, of course, you can just transfer your files. Now, the other problem that I've had with this setup is that because this is running in a Windows container, Bricklink doesn't have access to the local Linux environment. So if you create stuff, if you create a render or if you save your files, those files will be saved inside of a Windows container and not actually on your Linux desktop. So that means that you won't directly have access to it. Now, if all you're interested in doing is just building models, just experimenting, you don't actually need those files, then you can stop here. But if you want to actually access those files, then you need to do another step, and that will involve installing something which is called Protontricks. Now, I have a Protontricks installation here that was provided by the Flatpak. That's the one that I recommend that you do because I tried just a more basic installation and that did not go very well. So when you open Protontricks, what's going to happen is you are going to find one of your applications is going to be listed here. In particular, the application that we're going to be talking about is the Studio exe, not the +2, that's the installer. This is the one that we're looking for. It'll have a number associated with it. That's just the number that is assigned to the prefix, I think. I'm not an expert in Linux, but this is just stuff. Anyway, so once you open the Protontricks file, you'll select the default wine prefix, which is that one, and then Protontricks will start, and you can see that our current prefix is this. This is pointing to where you see that number is the same as the number of the file, of the option that we selected. That's because this is the right prefix. What you want to do is click Run Wine CFG, and then this will open basically your configuration tool. You go to Drives, and then you create a drive. I've created a D drive here, and you can see that it points to this file on my folder called Lego projects, right? That file, that folder, that directory, is on my Linux desktop. So what this creates now is it creates basically a mapping where it says that the D drive in the Windows environment points actually to the Lego projects folder in my Linux environment. So that creates a mapping between these two folders so that anything that is saved in the D drive will also then be saved in my Linux environment. So what that allows me to do is save these files here and extract them as on my Linux desktop, which means that now I can then save my files. So I'm going to show you that now, where I go to drives. Oops, there we go, D drive, and then you can see I've already got an IO file there. But that is the IO file of this banana Lego model. So if I save it, and then I go to my Lego projects folder, you can then see that I've got my parts list, the actual JPEG image, my other file, my IO file. So this is all the stuff that basically I created from my Lego model. I can then put that into Bricklink. So even though I can't directly access Bricklink here from this tool, from the Studio application, I can still extract all the files that I would normally send to Bricklink. It's just an extra step, where you just have to have these files, extract them, send them to Bricklink yourself. You don't just sign in and go upload to Studio. But that's not really that much of a hassle for me. I don't think that that's really that much extra work. What matters to me is that I've got the application, it's running, I can save files, I can render, I can get access to all the Lego files that I normally would have, and then, yeah, it's great. This is awesome. I think that this is a really quick thing to follow, but obviously, this information is maybe not so readily available if you don't have that much experience with Linux, or at least compatibility between Windows and Linux applications. It might not necessarily be so obvious to you. So hopefully this tutorial has helped. Once again, really credit to the Red user who really helped me out. I think that person is the MVP. This, I think, is working. It should work on a lot of other Linux distributions if you just follow the steps that I talked about. You'll have to do different things. Maybe you might not have access to the Flatpak for Protontricks. You might have to fiddle with those compatibility options. But so long as you have Steam and you can get Protontricks, you can set this up. So anyway, that brings us to the end. Thank you very much for watching the video. Leave your questions if you've got them. And yeah, Studio on Linux. It's great.